Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Wigtown Area Committee. I would like you to know at this point that this Area Committee will be live streamed on Teams and that the recording will be made available online shortly after the finish of the meeting. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally using their title, e.g. Councillor Smith, so that it's clear who the councillors are who is speaking, and through the process of elimination, who are the officers. Members, we have the remote participants. Please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Right, speak in the Teams chat function when you wish to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this through your iPhone or iPad, or if you just put your hands up on the Teams chat, that's fine for me. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so that we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to recommendation. This morning we have TBC, to be confirmed, Ward Youth Councillors for Mid Galloway and Wigtown West, and to be confirmed Ward Youth Councillor for Shannon the Rins. So everybody, welcome. Oh, TBC. Oh, sorry, TBC was the names of the...
We don't have any use ward councillors with us this morning.
That's a Biden teleprompter gaff there. So members, moving on, we're on to item 1, which is the settlement and apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. I approve of the remote participation. Have we got any apologies? Please advise.
Thank you, Chair. We've got 7 members present this morning, 5 here in the chamber, 2 members currently on Teams, being Councillors Hagman and McCammon. I believe there's an apology this morning from the Vice Chair, Councillor Hill, and as Ingrid stated, there's currently no youth councillors present. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Claire. Members, moving on to item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have a statement of connection or declaration of interest to declare based on the definition? Statement of connection for transparency reasons. Members may wish to make a public statement. Declaration of interest. Members would now require to leave the meeting for that item. Do I have any declarations, members? I'm seeing no hands up online or in the room. So moving on to item number 3, minutes of the previous meeting, the 4th of September 2024. Members are asked to note these minutes. Are we happy to note, members? And I believe that's us noted. Moving on to item number 4, members, Education Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate, end of year assessment of quality and curriculum service plan 2023 to 2024 performance. 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024. Report by Executive Director, Education Skills and Community Wellbeing. The first report we are being asked to consider today is the end of year performance report from the Education Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate in relation to performance in Wigtownshire. This is a very detailed report offering a great deal of information specific to our area. It's good to see in the appendices that performance figures are set against those for the rest of the recent Galloway and Scottish averages. This offers a clear comparative picture for members and the public. I'm particularly encouraged to read about the HMIE inspections mentioning the shrinks of the 3 primary schools, Castle Kennedy, Portpatrick and Rafad. All 3 reports are positive and recognise the work of staff and pupils, parents and communities. In this context, I'd also mentioned the positive reports from the Care Inspectorate regarding the nurseries at Slanhead, Wigtown, Park and Dromore. I'm also pleased to see that general school exclusion rates for Wigtownshire are within target as are those for looked after children. I know members here had previously asked questions about attendance and exclusion targets. It is good to see in Appendix 2 the Wigtownshire attainment figures set against those for D&G and the rest of Scotland, as this is what members have previously requested. Alison Chambers and Karen Ann Bryden are in attendance, along with Jamie Farker from Shannara Academy and George Webb from the Douglas Unit, to answer any questions to members. A big welcome to the head teachers, and I thank you for taking the time to attend this committee. I'm sure members will appreciate that while you can answer generic questions, there are sensitivities around questions or comments identifying specific schools or individuals. I'll ask members to bear this in mind when asking questions. I'll open the floor to members' questions and comments. Do we have the officers coming up to take a seat? We'll wait for the officers to come up and then I'll bring members in. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to our head teachers for attending this morning. Lovely to see you here in person, and also to our two officers as well. It's lovely to see everyone here to answer questions in the paper. To follow up what our Chair has said this morning, it is heartening and positive to see the HMI Inspectorate reports for the 4 primary schools. All 4 are very positive. As I look through the paper as a whole, what sprung to my mind, it appeared to be that in nursery and early years, especially looking at Appendix 3 with the PEF reports from the individual schools, that things are working very, very well. They're implementing that funding in a very good way, and it can clearly be seen that there are positive improvements for all those children that are involved within that scheme. I just wanted to add that in Appendix 3, not all the reports from the schools are laid out the same. Some are particularly good and very clear to see the very definite improvements. Some not so. Firstly, why would that be that they don't all report in the same manner? The ones that have reported very well, you can clearly see that progression and that positive step forward within those reports. But saying that, the positive start at nursery and primary, there seems to be a disconnect when you then go to look at the attainment figures, especially for our S5 and 6 pupils. Is there a specific reason for this apparent disconnect? I mean, this is what I've picked up looking at the paper as a whole. When I analysed the Appendix 1 for the framework, the key benchmark framework indicators, I wondered maybe, is it due to attendance? Well, no, because the Wigtown attendance rates are really good and positive. Is it due to the maybe pupils, looked after pupils, haven't been excluded? Again, for Wigtown, those rates of exclusion appear to be good and positive. So I just wondered, what is that disconnect? Because the attainment figures for Wigtown, based against the rest of Scotland, are not good.
Officers.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. I'll pick up your first point around the formatting of the Pupil Equity Fund reports. Schools are asked to report on their Pupil Equity Fund in 2 different components. So one component is within their Standards and Quality report, which is the area that you see sort of on the green template, which asks them to give that very generic statement around impact of Pupil Equity Fund, how they're closing the poverty-related attainment gap. And then in addition to that, our schools are asked to complete Pupil Equity Fund planning sheets, and the second half of that is the report on the work that they complete a year later. So that's just why there's the differences between the different reporting formats. Okay, I think Alison will now take over.
Good morning, Councillor Marsh. In terms of the attainment disconnect, first of all, there has been work with primaries and secondaries, and that has been going on for a long number of years. However, we really recognise that post-COVID, that more work needs to be done in terms of ensuring that there is a progression that comes from primary all the way through secondary. It's not just conversations. So we're looking at tracking and monitoring as one of our ways of really try and tie that together So we have a tracking and monitoring group who are looking at how we do that in primary broad education as well as secondary. So that's part of our work that we're looking at in terms of this academic year. I would say it's a marathon, not a sprint, so therefore it is taking time, but we recognise that our attainment is not where we would like to be, not just in Wigtown, Wigtownshire, but across Dumfries and Galloway. If you look at our local government's benchmarking framework, you know that our attainment's not where we want it to be. So we are looking at what are all the little parts of the solution, and one of the parts of the solution is transition, and one of the parts of the solution is tracking and monitoring, so that we've got that real understanding and that we're tracking. What used to happen was we used to track in primary 1, primary 4, primary 7, S3. We've recognised our authority that that's not enough. There's too many gaps in between that don't tell the story, so we're now tracking primary 1, well, from nursery 5 all the way through to S3, and we're doing that 3 times a year for all of our young people. So that hopefully will help inform what the information that secondary schools have, as well as the current dialogue that they currently have within their clusters, and maybe the 2 head teachers can share a bit of that cluster sort of conversation that happens in terms of attainment in the transition into secondary. In terms of the attainment picture, the 5 at 5, the 5 at 6, again, what I would say with that is we know that the attainment is not where we would want it to be. We know it is just one measure, so there's other great work that happens within our schools that is not measured in that way. But again, it's about if we understand where young people are coming from, if we understand what their data tells us, if we can then course them in the right way to ensure they're getting the chance to set 5 qualifications at the end of S4, or because we try to get to 7, we know that there has been perhaps a push from some of the parents to say instead of doing 5 national 5s, can maybe just do 4, and so that we're trying to really accelerate how we're now delivering within our schools to try and pull that attainment picture back up. But perhaps the head teachers can give you a flavour of what they're doing within their own schools. But certainly we acknowledge it, we're working at as a collective, and schools are working with their clusters to try and improve that attainment picture.
Mr Farquhar, Mr Webb. Jamie Farquhar.
Thank you, Councillors. Councillor Marsh, particularly very astute but wide-ranging question. I think that's the challenge, isn't it? I think you're right. Speaking personally from Stranraer, that trajectory, if you like, is slightly more nuanced, but it continues through years 4, 5 and 6. So one of the other measures that we're really judged on and work towards is our virtual comparator upon our Insight tool, which is a statistical tool which takes account of various challenges, barriers to learning, which I think is an important point. So we are not an average Dumfries and Galloway school, and we're certainly not a national average school. So those factors, are important. So if we're matching or indeed exceeding our VC, our virtual comparator, then that's a key indicator for us. We are doing that across the board in S4 for approximately 80% of our pupils in S5, but less so in S6. So there's even, within your challenge that you identify, and I accept there's some challenge there. But against virtual comparators, I would imagine across Wigtownshire, but certainly in Stranraer, we are making progress.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the virtual comparator is not something I've heard of or come across before. Could you explain where's the baseline? What kind of figures are used to come up with this virtual comparator?
So, Councillor Marsh, I'm going to come back in at this point. I'm sorry that it's like ping pong this morning. I think it's because there's so many of us here. So, a virtual comparator it's an algorithm. To be fair, it's an algorithm where they take the main factors of your school and they try and create that in a sort of virtual sort of surrounding, and say, so if that young person was in another school, a virtual school that had the similarities to your school, how would they be performing? And so therefore there's a measure, and it's a government benchmarking tool called Insight, and so therefore every school has a virtual comparator that's based on an algorithm that takes out all the different factors of like SIMD, LAC, ASN, attendance and everything else, and it pulls that together and said, if you were in another school of a similar, then how would they be performing? Is that helpful?
That's that. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's a pretty heavy read, the whole document, to try and make anything of it, in terms of how are we doing in the schools and everything else. And perhaps, there's an item on the agenda later on. Perhaps the format for me isn't right in terms of addressing all the issues. And I would like to see, if we're moving forward, for each of the head teachers of the schools to be here so that we can speak to them direct. And I know the two head teachers can speak in terms of the clusters, but it's important to see what they're doing in the schools and hear for the head teachers. So perhaps change the format of this area committee, because they're all asking general questions of each of the schools. And that's like how rigorous the school approach to providing robust evidence and closing attainment gaps. Then it goes on to say how well are we at removing barriers for learning and ensuring equity for all. And that's all the kids. How much progress have we made in reducing the poverty related attainment gaps? What are the lessons learned? And I look at the beginning of the report and it says, how are we going to get it right for every child? When I'm reading a press release from the EIS yesterday that talked about, you know, in terms of this budget, it's perhaps education is going to look at reducing 50% of the ASN fund. And the EIS are opposing that, which I can rightly say. I was at a meeting on Monday in Ayr, where the First Minister had his cabinet out in show, and the question was asked by a lady in the audience, you know, how are we going to do this in terms of the ASN, additional support needs, where we had the Chancellor announcing that she's going to put more money into ASN. And what's the effect on the schools? Are they getting enough to do all these things, to close the attainment gaps, to look at the poverty and how we're doing it? I want to hear from the head teachers and see what the issues are. So it's perhaps not a question of anybody here, because they're all asking the same, and it's all good reading. Pretty heavy reading, but it's good reading of how we're doing, and all the kids are happy and well. What an achievement in that respect. So it's rather change the format and spend a day with a cluster in the Stranraer area, and likewise in the Maccas, the cluster with the head teacher, so that we know what's going on. And we've visited our schools. I've visited Belmont and Old Park, and I know it's only a minute thing, but it's a big issue for me in terms of the Mugas, the school layout, you know, and that achieves attainment as well. I'm going on, but it's a pretty heavy, you know, and they're all coming back, and it's a good read. Heavy read, but a good read. But we want to hear, what are the issues for the schools? What are the issues for the schools in your cluster area?
Thank you, Councillor Scobie, for the... There was a lot in that, and I was trying to pick out the question in terms of what you're looking for, and I think you're right. You've got an agenda item regarding the format and how area committees can work better so that you do have a much clearer understanding. It's not perhaps such a heavy read. I think also, though, and I'm speaking in behalf of the head teachers and they can speak for themselves, that they would welcome yourselves into the schools to have those conversations, because there are cluster meetings, both Douglas Shore and Stranraer have cluster meetings, and it might be an opportunity for you actually to be part of, where you're not going to 8-9 schools, you're actually going to one school with all the head teachers are in that format. But I'll hand over to the head teachers to see if they've got anything they want to share in terms of how you can have a closer relationship, because what I'm hearing is that you're looking for a closer relationship to understand how you can best support the schools to support the young people.
Just come in at that point, you know, because we're not seeing that in this report. We're seeing what's been achieved, how we're achieving, how we're closing the gap and everything else. But we're not seeing, as an area committee, for the cluster that we are responsible for in terms of Ward 1 and Ward 2. And you hit the nail on the head. It's to get that closer connection with the cluster schools and the head teacher that we can't get for this format. We don't get it because all this is indicating how we're doing. But, you know, it's what are the issues in the schools? How do we address these issues? Whether it's by changing layout, by giving more teachers, by whatever it is. And it's that closer relationship that we're not getting from the reports that are here before us, is my opinion.
What you're saying, Councillor Scobie, is you want to get into the real nitty-gritty of the issues. But I'll invite Mr Webb, I believe, indicated wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Scobie, for your question. I'm going to kind of answer a little bit for Councillor Mars's question as well, because when we're looking at our kind of cluster approach and our planning, just as Alison has said, we do quite a lot of work together as a cluster. So we meet as all of the heads together. But what we're looking at is learning from each other. So we look at things that are working well, particularly when we're looking at our PEF and our attainment for our primaries, and then how we can then continue that. So for me, when we're looking at how do we make improvements, and for using our PEF, for example, as Councillor Marsh had asked about, it's about the prevention, but also looking at the interventions that we can do. So last year, for example, in our cluster, we worked together with some of our PEF kind of initiatives so that we could see it not just as a 1 year, but as a follow through. So from primary 4, 5, 6, 7 into first, second and third year. But as Alison has said, I would welcome you to come along to any of our cluster days that we have. Our next one's actually tomorrow, but I realise that's short notice. But also our parent council meetings. And I can't speak for Jamie, but I've been fortunate enough that I do get representatives from here that come along to our parent council meeting. So our last one that we had, we talked particularly at length. I spoke about our attainment picture, outlining the journey we're on, the issues that we're facing, similar to what Jamie was talking about, but looking not just about our comparisons with each other in Wigtownshire or in D&G, but nationally as well, to see the areas that we're working on to make those improvements. But to answer your question, the issues are there that we do have. Trying to recruit staff is an issue that we have, particularly in this area that we have. It's about trying to get the right staff and indeed getting people applying for posts and coming into the area. I think that maybe links to the point you were making as well about the wider picture we're looking at. This isn't just an education side, this is D&G as a whole, about how we can attract more people into our area. But certainly when we're looking at our pupil equity and reducing the poverty-related attainment gap, I do welcome that approach. It's a wider issue than just what we can do in schools. It's us as a community and a council. And that's what we try to do, to work together. In terms of our staffing that you asked about, particularly ASN, we work with the staff that we're given and we do the best that we can for our pupils that we have. I was fortunate for this year to have increased staffing within ASN through the kind of changed approach to that. And that's been the benefit to our young people by having more staff there and full-time staff and permanent contracts. So as an area, you know, if you gave me a wish list, I would ask for more staff. I think everybody would be the same, but we work with the staff that we have and look at those gaps to try and close, particularly not just the poverty-related attainment gap, but gaps across the curriculum for our young people to do the best that we can.
Thanks for that, Mr Webb. Councillor Scobie.
And just to come back, and I think you've answered it in your last remark, we work with the staff we are given. We're currently going through a budget consultation exercise. This does not give me warts and all, this report. It tells us what we're achieving and all the rest. And it's like going in front of your boss and saying, your boss, I need more money. And I need this and I need that. And I think, oh, well, I'm not managing that. Or I'm feeling how I manage what I've been given. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I want to meet in a format that has all that hears for teachers and say, if I was given the opportunity, as you are now being given the opportunity in this consultation exercise, to say, where do I want to see things addressed? Do I want to see more teachers? Do I want to see more for additional support needs? What are the issues? So that then we can address as a council the issues that are coming up for education. Because if we don't, then you'll just work away at doing what you can with what you've been given. I don't want to see it. I want to see that we attain much more by, is it through additional funding? Is it by more teachers and something, you know, and to say, you know, if I was given more teachers, of course I would take it, but are they needed? And that's what we are getting through education, any education committee I've attended. We're saying, we're working on something else and that'll provide a better result. Will it? You're the ones who can tell us. And we're not getting that for this report. And it's that format again, I'll come back to this, that would give me, so that we're meeting with head teachers from your clusters, and they tell us what, warts and all. What is it that you would want from the authority that would make things better in my school? Am I making understood? I think I'm.
Well, so my thoughts on what you're saying here, Councillor Scobie, is that you want a formalised format through this committee, and with an agreement of this committee that we would like the education department to go back and organise roundtable meetings for us with the clusters, so that we can see the warts and all and get that information that we would like, especially coming into budget time. And can we formalise that here today and have that noted? I'll bring in Alice, sorry.
So therefore, if that's within your that is within your ask, but it's not within our gift, so therefore we would need to go to governance, and councillors know that that would have to be agreed, because as you're also aware that when we agree one thing for one of our area committees, then that has an impact in the other 3 area committees. So I would push that back for an action to governance to see if you're looking for something different, what that would then be.
Well, I would say area committee sovereign, so we'll request it and we'll get it. Claire and then Jamie Farker.
Thank you, Governance Officer here. Just pointing to item 6 on the agenda, which is review of area committees. So it gives you the opportunity to review your delegations, how it's working and how that may be reflected in the council scheme going forward. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Claire. Now, Councillor Farker, and then we're definitely going on to Councillor McCalman and Councillor Dashper.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. It was just to extend that same invitation to Stranraer Academy and the cluster, and also to say that you'd be very welcome, certainly in my school, to extend that conversation to my staff, because whereas senior officers, we've got our various protocols and our views, and we're seeing things from a head teacher point of view. I'm very happy for you to speak to the chalk face and gain that granularity of understanding that you're seeking as elected members.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Mr Farker, sorry. Moving on to Councillor McCalman.
Yes, good morning everyone, and welcome Jamie and George. It's lovely to see you here, and for the Quality Assurance girls. Although I think the head teachers may be regretting attending. It's more. I've got more of a general question, please, and it's to do with the deferred. The deferral at nursery age. So we've brought in how you can defer your child going from nursery to P1 at the age of 5. I just wondered if there's any feedback on that at all, what work we're doing there in terms of how is that achieving anything positive in terms of the attainment gap, ASN needs, how do we work with parents to make that decision, or is it basically just the parents' decision to do that? It's just a wee bit more information on that. It's nothing that I've got particular in mind that I want to ask, but I'm just interested in that process, because I'm aware, obviously, in my mum circles, if you like, I know there's a couple of parents who have deferred their kids. And obviously I would never ever ask why or anything, but it was just to see what benefit that has to primary school kids going into P1. Apart, the obvious is the obvious, but how are we measuring that, as a local authority, and what actions are we taking if it's not working, if that makes sense?
Thanks for that, Councillor McCallan. Caroline Bryden.
Thank you, Councillor McCarran. When a decision is made for a young person to have a deferred entry into primary 1, that additional year in nursery, that decision is made in partnership with the parents, an educational visitor team, educational psychologists. There's a lot of people around the young person that are involved in that decision. I don't have any data with me today around the impact of those decisions on a area basis or a local authority basis, but very much there are ongoing conversations as the young person progresses through the year, and there have been instances when perhaps those decisions have maybe been reversed or altered, but we could certainly get you further information around that.
Councillor Harkin.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Like I say, there's no urgency. It was just a matter of me gaining the knowledge of how it works, you know, in the back end, if you like. But thanks for that. Yeah, I'll wait on that coming through.
Thanks for that. Councillor Ashworth.
Thank you. Yeah, so Appendix 3, I really welcome this. It's exactly the sort of information that we've been looking for in area committees about how PEF is being used and spent in our schools. I appreciate this also came to Education Committee, the last one, about PEF and how it's being spent and stuff. A lot of schools were having underspends where the money wasn't being used fully each year. So I'm just wondering if we can maybe hear from our head teachers, you know, it's great to see how it's being spent, but is the money being spent efficiently? Are there underspends? And if so, why is that? We'd just really like to hear from the horse's mouth. Thanks.
Mr. Farquhar, Mr. Webb, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Councillor Dashford. In terms of the PEF spend, I mean, the money is allocated per year, but what we have found over the last maybe 5 years is we are having continual spends because we're seeing interventions that are working. This year for my school, I actually had an overspend with mine, so I wasn't in that position. But what I would say is, as I said earlier, we look at it from both the kind of early intervention approaches and then looking at what support that we can give. A lot of our, for my school in particular, our PEF allocation, we are spending that on resources, i.e. human resources, staffing. So what I probably could say for some other schools, and that can be variable, and sometimes then you'll budget that for the year, but you may not get that person for the year or so forth, so you may then have an underspend for some, or indeed an overspend is there. But what we do try to do is plan through the PEF sheets that you've seen in the report, what our interventions are going to be and how they're going to impact on the young people. But it's more, what we've seen is we've gained more experience over the years of the PEF funding is what is having the biggest impact and how do we continue to do that. So it's certainly about bringing in a resource, like for a teacher, learning assistants, youth services, the things that I've got, and you've seen in my report there. The value that I found in that has been, it's been really, really strong, and I can see the difference that it's making there, but it's a continued path that we're looking at from there. So the reason why I think some schools will maybe have that underspend, or indeed for me the overspend, is it's that cost that you're looking at and how you can get that and meet that. But I think it goes back to the other question that we had when we were looking about particularly staffing and recruitment. I think something we do need to be very clear about and remember is, particularly in our area, identifying and getting the right staff and recruiting can be sometimes issues there. So you may not get the person in the time that you need them for, or for the length of time that you've got. So it is that variation that you're looking at. But the more time we've been running with this, the more we're seeing the projects that are working and how we can continue to fund that.
Mr. Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dasher. I don't have too much to add. Mr. Webb's response was really a good explanation. The vagaries and the challenges of staffing is certainly a key factor. I think there's also an element of when an underspend establishes itself, it's quite hard to then catch up with that underspend for all the same reasons. We also have to be wary of permanence in contracts, so the staffing that we recruit through PEF can't then become a permanent burden to the local authority and to our devolved funding. So the staffing issues certainly are challenging, and I would agree with George that we're increasingly getting better at both spending it, but both spending it efficiently as well. And our considerable underspend of the last few years has been allocated this year to within about 8% of our total allocation, for example. And I think as other budgets become more challenging, then so the absolute necessity to spend PEF both promptly and effectively becomes more acute. So the challenge, I suppose, is that where PEF was, I believe, ideologically seen as an additional resource, it's now absolutely core and central to running our schools.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. Webb and Mr. Farquhar. Councillor Ashford, have you got any comeback? Thanks for that, Councillor Ashford. Members, Councillor Ingalls.
Yeah, if I can come in at the tail end just for 2 minutes. Page 22 and 23 on school attendance rates, which is, they look quite high at 91.5%, but there's still quite a percentage there. I would assume that are children that are not attending school. I'm just wondering how we're addressing that. School exclusion rates, 19.68 is the value against 11.9 target. Just wondering, it seems to be increasing, whether that's something that, obviously it's coming probably through COVID, that we're beginning to deal with stuff, behaviour in schools and stuff like that. So how are we coping with that within the schools? And the other one was on the Wigtown school exclusion rates for looked after children per 1,000. The target is 111. Is that a misprint or is that the target? A value of 18.52.
Officers.
Thank you. I'll come in and answer on that one. So your first question, the school exclusion rates at 19.68 and 11.9, that is the Dumfries and Galloway figure,
right,
and the Wigtownshire one is 0.65 and 15.90 for exclusion rates. So there is a reduction that we're very pleased with in the Wigtownshire ones. As far as attendance goes, we have a Dumfries and Galloway group looking at attendance across the authority. We have been looking at the coding that's being applied in schools for attendance to make sure that's an accurate reflection of attendance. There's also work alongside the National Attendance Group to look at interventions and supports, the universal supports within school, and then that more targeted support for attendance, and actually the work that our team are looking at, they've been asked to share on a national level as well, so that's a positive one. Looking at the exclusion rates for the looked after pupils, the value was 111.10 against a target of 77.8. That was last year's figures. 2 years ago's figures, sorry, and now the current figures are 50 against 77.80. But what I can do is I can sort of give you the minutiae detail, because that's a rate per 1,000 pupils. So in this period, in primary, there were exclusions across 9 schools, and 15 pupils in total were excluded in that period. And in the year period across the 2 secondary schools, 17 pupils were excluded across the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Inglis, would you like to come back? No. Thanks for that, Councillor Inglis. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, could I come back? I'm just looking at this, and I'm just taking any school. I'm not naming any schools. And one of the warts on this one is, due to the high staff absence rates, high learner absence, staff returning from various leave throughout the year, staff leaving for different opportunities and availability of supply staff throughout the year. I could go on and on, just talking on that. Now, we've heard both from George and Jamie, but I fully understand and appreciate they focus on their own school. We're not hearing from the other school head teachers. And that's why I'll reinforce what I've already said. A different format, being able to have a presentation from each of the head teachers to say how their school is doing, because it's right and proper that you can answer for your own school, but it's difficult to answer for another school in terms of what this report is reflecting. So it's to reinforce why I'm asking. And Jamie touched on a very important part. PEV is aligned to the free school meals, and that's how much it's awarded. That's awarded for the Scottish Government. And if they decided tomorrow that they were no longer continuing, God forbid they ever did it, but if they decided tomorrow they want to go and do it, that would create a huge, great big gap in the school funding that should be there as a core. So that's why, and I'm just reinforcing, that we need a different format. The reports are excellent in terms of what it gives, the information it gives, but it doesn't allow us to hear for the head teacher in terms of how they're attaining, what's the problems that are there, and I've just read out one. In terms of absence, head teachers filling in for supply teachers and so forth and so on. What problems does it create? So again, Chair, it's just to change the format, and as Claire said, I already refer to that. There's an item 6 on the agenda today that gives us the opportunity.
Well, Councillor Scobie, I was actually going to say maybe we could add, well, we've got the education officers here, maybe we add an extra recommendation, maybe a 2.5, that this committee would like a formal avenue of how we meet and engage with our local clusters. And I think that it would be quite right for us to add that, considering some of the discussion today. Can we add that in as a 2.5, Claire?
Chair, I would suggest as an action, obviously you've been given invites to the cluster meetings, but as for the role of the area committee, I'd say save that for item 6 and how the committee operates. Thank you.
Right, so we can pull that in item 6. But I do want that formalised in this committee. I don't want it to just be taken as an action that then gets forgotten about. I would like it to be in the paper. Councillor Scobie?
Chair, I would support you to go for this in 2.5 and still reinforce it in item 6. And it's an addition of a 2.5, and I'm happy to move second, whatever, to add that 2.5, because we need it in a formal basis, and I'm not saying that the cluster meetings aren't formal. It's so that they can, head teachers can come and make a presentation on their own school. And then maybe, we could end up that head teachers are challenging the authority as to we're not providing what is needed for them to achieve some of these targets. That's why I'm asking, and it becomes more formal.
That's right, Councillor Scobie. I've got Councillor McCarman with her hand up.
Yeah, it was just very quickly, and it's a question on attendance recording, please. So, and it's something I've come across a couple of times. I'm just interested to hear and understand how it's recorded. But for example, if a pupil is off for an interim period for whatever reason, be it bullying, sadly, or a broken leg, for example, and they're being sent home work from school, and they're doing their work at home, how is their attendance marked? Is it marked as in they're still attending, if you like, the lessons and the work, or are they simply marked as absent, even though they're still, learning at home? It's just something that I've come across a couple of times. It's a bit unclear. Thanks.
Alison, Caroline.
Thank you, Councillor McCarran. Because the pupil is absent from school, it's marked as an authorised absence, that they are absent from formal education within a school building.
Councillor McCallum.
Okay, thanks. I'll leave it there just now.
Thanks for that, Councillor McCallum. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. Apologies, I had to take an urgent call, so I wasn't able to join. So I'll apologise just now. I'm not sure what you have covered and what you haven't covered in this item, so I hope not to repeat myself. But I think the point that Councillor McCammon was just speaking about attendance, I think it is a sticky issue. I'm aware that it was brought up even at full council in terms of what are our absence figures, and I think there were officers from education that said, well, we don't actually have all the data, and I think there's a concern about how we're monitoring that, and if there's any update to those questions that were raised at full council, I think that would be useful to know, and how it's affected here in Wigtownshire. I think one of the concerns I've got, and apologies if it's been answered already, is just about the attainment in Wigtownshire and the fact that our attainment is lower than the rest of D&G, and what specific actions are we seeking and taking forward, whether we need to have a further discussion. Obviously there's a couple of recommendations being made reference there, and it took us about, I think, maybe 18 months to try and get locality meetings set up with health and social care teams to find out what's actually happening in Wigtownshire. Can we set up something similar for education? I mean, obviously we have to, respect what's happening across our schools, and head teachers are empowered to make decision making, but it is quite a challenge to know, well, what is happening on the ground, because unless specific parents or pupils come to us direct, often we're not necessarily getting a real understanding of what's happening in the schools. So is there a model that we can possibly look at, similar to the health and social care, where we're almost having a locality meeting that we can, maybe out with committee, but it is still recorded. I'm in hands of the members and officers for suggestions on that one. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hagman. Carla?
I'll just pick up Councillor Hagman around attendance. So absolutely, our attendance, we use a series of coding through CMIS. So there different types of attendance are recorded in different ways. We as a central team have sight of that on a monthly basis, and that attendance is also shared termly with head teachers across all our schools, so they can actually see the picture. That's part of the work that we're doing, targeting attendance. So there's that sharing again across our schools in Dumfries and Galloway, where schools are making gains with attendance, for example, and other schools are perhaps having some sticking points with some elements of attendance. That practice can be shared across our schools as well.
Good morning, Councillor Hagman. It's unfortunate you sort of missed the first 10-15 minutes of our conversation where we absolutely, our Councillor Scobie even, was going to point 6 of the agenda to say we need to have that sort of conversation and governance and action around how we have a better connection with our schools, so we can understand the detail that sits within these reports and have that communications. And Mr Farquhar, the head teacher of Stranraer, was sharing the fact of attainment. When we look at attainment, we're not necessarily comparing apples with apples, it's apples with pears, because Stranraer and Wigtownshire are not average schools in Scotland. They have their own context, and when they look at them, when they compare themselves to what is called the virtual comparator, they do fare much better. So I think the nuances of what happens within all of our schools, whether that's primary or secondary, needs to be shared, but the platform in which that is shared is not within my gift, and that comes back to elected members, governance, and then how we move forward with that.
Thanks for that, Alison. Councillor Marsh, did I see you indicating I wish to speak? No? Just give me a smile there. So members, we'll move on to the recommendations then. Looking around the room, I've got no hands up. So we'll move to recommendations, which is 1, consider Education and Learning Directorate area-based successes and developments as detailed in the key successes section of this report, paragraphs 4.3 to 4.11. 2, scrutinise area report, Wigtownshire, as set out at Appendix 1, which we've done. 3, review the attainment summary, Wigtownshire 2022-2023, as set out in Appendix 2. And 4, review the pupil equity fund summary, Wigtownshire, as set out in Appendix 3. And I'll ask Claire to bring in our 2.5 that we're looking to add.
Thank you, Chair. Suggested wording for you members. 2.5, recognising that there is a review of area committees, request that there is an opportunity for the area committees to engage with local clusters and hear directly from head teachers. This was facilitate a closer connection to the cluster schools.
I'm happy with that wording. Are you happy with that, Councillor Scobie? Not a problem. Thanks for that. So members, that's us finished with that item. Are we happy to agree with the recommendation? Sorry. Councillor Scobie.
Just to say, well, it's accepted as a further recommendation, just so that we get an action from it, that we get a report back on how well that's doing.
We'll raise that at the next committee. Hopefully we can have a meeting before the next committee, but thanks for that, members. So, members, moving on to item number 5, I'll give our education team a chance to pick up their stuff, and thank you for joining us today, and thanks to our head teachers for joining us. So members, moving on to item number 5, Stranraer Regeneration update on economic development capital programme projects. We now turn to our second report, which is a progress update on key projects within the Economic Development Capital Programme relating to Stranraer. Members are keen to be updated on detail of activities and achievement of milestones. It is interesting to note that the submission of the Town Investment Plan to the Borderlands Programme Board, and that this was based on the priorities identified in the Place Plan. This is very positive work, closely involving our local community. It's good also to see some detail on the delays to the development of the George Hotel, but that things are progressing. The operating model for the George continues to be challenging, and members will be interested in exploring how this is developing. There's a good amount of additional detail around Stranraer regeneration contained in the report, and I'll open the floor to members for comments or questions on their specific areas of interest. Stuart McMillan is available to answer members' questions and comments. This, members, is when I wish I brought my glasses. I don't usually need them, but when I've got this amount to read. But members, any comments or questions? Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, again, I welcome this one. I think we've been doing a bit of sand dancing around it, and this is perhaps the first one that we've got a really comprehensive report before us, and also an assurance from Stuart that we will be updated as we go along. As soon as reports are made to the project board, we will, after that, get reports as well. I think, and I say this in terms of, if we look at 4.6, this is the first time I've heard that it's been 6 weeks. 16 weeks to be 16 weeks behind schedule. That's the first time that, at least I have, I don't know about any other member, but I would believe this is the first time we've heard that it's 16 weeks, and they're trying to see how they can accelerate that. So again, that knocks it back. And then there's a further report in terms of that rather than 2025, it may be 2026 before the project is finished. Maybe we get some clarity on that. Also on 4.7, we hear about senior responsible officers, project board. This is the first time I've actually, there's been an indication of what the project board's been made up of. And it's basically officers reporting back to officers, is my understanding on reading this. So in that respect, I think as members that are, you know, in terms of where the public-facing aspect of this, we're the ones that come under the greatest criticism in terms of what's happening at the George. It should be knocked down rather than what it's doing and all the rest. Fortunately, it's not, but this is the first time. So it's trying to get that clarity in terms of what we are told as local members in taking forward. Because I think in this one, when you look at 410, and that's talking about the operating model, we've really got to get the stakeholders, the people of Stranraer, totally behind this. And the way we do that is to keep them continually updated. And Stuart will be fed up with me asking this in terms of updating the video in the customer service centre so that people can go in and see exactly where they're at, what they're doing, and how well they're doing. And as I say, we should be reporting as it is the public document that now says we're 16 weeks behind. We're good in, well, maybe no good, but the reasons are here why we're 16 weeks. And well before we actually started, then it was floated about amongst the people of Stranraer that the George was actually built in sand. So that would almost indicate that they weren't far wrong. So that there's a great deal of underpinning going on there. When I look at other aspects of this report, then there's one on the furniture project, the Stranraer furniture project, the way that it's being developed. Again, references being made back to June of this year when the asset transfer was approved. Just maybe ask you, how far on are we that we can really see progress with this project, that the land has been handed over to the project, and rather than being at REBA 3, we take it to REBA 4 and REBA 5 so that we can see some work going on there. because it's no good continue reporting, well, it's based on the asset transfer that was agreed in June, but yet we're not seeing any progress. So that's taken a bit of time, but I think it's important that we as members are told, but more importantly, the public are told, the stakeholders of this project are fully advised and informed as to where the project actually is and how it's progressing.
That's for that, Councillor Scobie. I know that you and I and Councillor Hill and Ben and Councillor Ashworth in the past, we've all stressed the need for communication from officers in the council on the George Tail and other parts of economic development in Stranraer. I'll bring in Stuart. Stuart, I hope you were taking notes there. That was a lengthy question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Scobie, for your comments, welcome those. And I hope that, and I'm taking actually from your comments that the level of detail that we've presented to the committee this morning is appropriate and is giving you some of those answers to some of the queries that you've had to date about the projects, how projects are managed in general, but also on the specifics of some of the specific projects in the town and in Stranraer. And I think just on picking up on a couple of those points in particular, lots of projects have, as you will appreciate, lots of projects have ebbs and flows in terms of their delivery timescales, and whilst 16 weeks is a big delay to the George Hotel, you probably hit the nail on the head in terms of the sort of, we knew that there were unknowns in the start of the project in terms of particularly in terms of the foundations and the sensitivity of the building once some of the structural steels that were supporting it were started to be removed and switched, etc., etc. And actually some of those were having, some of that work was having an effect on neighbouring properties as well. So it wasn't just the George structure itself and its lack of foundations on a sandy base, as you quite rightly said. It was the need to do some very, very careful work to protect those facades and to protect the buildings around it. Hence the delay. But you can be assured that the project team, the project management team, clerks of work, etc., are working really hard with the contractors to see where time can be made up over the course of the next few months to bring the project back to into a timescale that is more one that we were expecting. And you will now see, I think, if you've had a chance to look through the Harris fencing on Church Street at the back of the site, that now that we're out of the ground and the steelworks are going up, that the building is now starting to take shape very, very quickly. So range of things that we are doing over the course of the next 2 or 3 months in the town, which is going to bring the community bang up to date with a lot of the sort of next steps on projects that we are planning. And I went through that with some of the ward members last week on Friday. So public consultation events and exhibitions that are coming up at the end of the month, and then again in the new year that relate to the marina. But around that, we're also doing some updates publicly on many of the other projects that are associated with the whole waterfront, the waterfront push, and all the projects that align to that. And taking up your point, Councillor Scobie, as you made on Friday as well, we will be updating all of the collateral, all of the communication materials, looking at the video within the hub, etc., to do a big sort of quarterly refresh of all of that, so that we're now talking about the things that are with a bit more certainty on dates and times about things that are going to happen in 2025 and that people will see. So appreciate your comments on that. Oh yes, the reuse shop as well. Now, yes, the asset transfer process. Now I'll check on this, but I think the asset transfer process, although obviously agreed at committee in June, that process is undertaken by a different service to my own. So we're I think we're at the position of awaiting that conveyancing work has concluded, and then we can get in behind the reuse shop with the funding package that we have to support them in the next phases, REBA 4, REBA 5, getting on site, etc. So there's a specific project officer within the team that is working with the project, and we're just waiting on those legal processes concluding.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Councillor Scobie, would you like to come back?
Yeah, just on 2 points, Stuart. As I say, on the last remark you made there about the Stranraer Community Reuse Shop project on the conveyance, and that's 5 months since we agreed to asset transfer. Could we get a report on that just to see where the issues are and what's the causing this to go through as a transfer, so that we can move that project on, or the organisation can move that on? Again, just on the last one, just to ask the question, has the completion date moved into 2026? And I know there's talk of going to the government to get an extension on that. Has the date moved, the completion date?
Sure.
For the George Hotel, Councillor Scobie, is that you're referring to that project?
Yeah, the George Hotel. Has that
just a bit, yes. Yeah, no, it's still within 2025.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Thanks for that, Councillor Scobie. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my points have been covered by Councillor Scobie, because, like him, this is the first I'm seeing of project boards and some of the language used in the report. So it is welcome to get this level of detail, but actually, I am slightly concerned about where the oversight is of elected members, because, one of the, as Councillor Scobie just said, if anything goes wrong, we as elected members are first in the firing line. And why didn't we ask the questions? Why didn't we have oversight? And certainly when we look on page 147, it references stakeholder engagement and communication, but it says within the project management plan, which I've not seen as far as I'm aware, there's a number of other plans, including a risk plan, benefit plan, quality plan, and the stakeholder engagement and communication plan. Now, we do have the stakeholder and communication plan here, but we don't have the risk plan, we don't have the benefits plan, and actually, why have we got one of the plans, but not all of them? So that would be my sort of first question. The second one is in terms about the operating model, again, which was picked up earlier, but I am slightly concerned about the phrase that work is being undertaken to identify and pursue an option that will bring forward a more viable operating model for the George. So clearly we don't have an operating model by that phrase. And I am concerned, I appreciate it's a different project, it's a different team, but, we have got the example of Mowbray that, was just taken to committee yesterday. And, there's been a huge amount of funding being put in there by the council. It's the operating plans, we weren't party to them. And, that is it's a disaster for the community, that asset and the funding that's gone in. So what lessons have we learned from Mowbray that we're going to ensure that we're safeguarding best value for money for the people of Stranraer, for the people of Dumfries and Galloway? So just if you can expand anything upon that one. And my third point that I wanted to just raise, obviously I'm looking at the communication plan, and it is quite detailed, and there are some dates. It's not particularly clear. I'll put that out there, and I'm looking, going, well, has that started? Has it not started? It's a bit messy, it feels, but I appreciate it's probably a working document. The very last point of the programme of stakeholders' engagement to develop and realise the project benefit plans. It's not started that status, but it has got who, wider community. I'm really pleased to see that at the very top, because clearly, that is the community is our most important stakeholder. But there's the DGC Arts Festival Spring Fling, but actually what's missing out there is the Sea Pirates group, which is a local community art group as well. So can we add the Sea Pirates to that? Because if we're going specifically to organisations such as Spring Fling, why on earth are we not going to the local Stranraer group of artists and creatives? So if that can be added on there. And yeah, just for noting, yes, we do get our updates on the Ward 1 and 2 economic updates, and there is snippets of information in there in the George. I'm just slightly concerned that there's so much information in those updates that some of the really important stuff gets lost, because if you give us so much information, we can't see the really important stuff. So I guess that's maybe about nuancing how we go forward. By all means, please don't stop sending those updates, because I think they are really useful. But yeah, those are my 3 points. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hagman. Not that I want to add context to anyone's thing, but what you've just mentioned there, something that's Ward 1 Council have been going on for a while now, about our involvement in how these projects are coming forward. I think sometimes we feel like we are being seen more as a consultee and a stakeholder, rather than actually being at the heart and elected councillors, where there is an expectation from the public that we are leading on these projects. I think we've had that aspect of our job removed from us, the leadership aspect. But I'll bring in Stuart.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hagman, for your points and questions, etc. And I think part of that does relate to some of the points that Councillor Scobie was asking as well, just about the relationship between the things that officers are delegated to do under project management, and the fact that that the management of those projects is very much delegated to the officers. There is a senior responsible officer for every project. There is a capital investment programme board of senior officers that looks at the development of business cases, project approvals, and then delivery, and that is then reported through now E&I committee in particular. But I think what we're trying to move towards here in particular, given that there's such a concentration of significant projects in and around Stranraer, is that the area committee and its members need engaged within a different way. And I think this is let's put this down as the starting point of that more in-depth involvement and engagement with you. The meetings, the Ward 1, Ward 2 briefing sessions, I think, are now all in the diary for next year as well. And you can be assured that we will continue to bring this sort of level of detail to the area committee, and being mindful of what Councillor Hagman was saying, to be really focused in the messaging that we're bringing to you in terms of some of the issues that we're dealing with, and obviously the sort of things that the members will want to be aware of, because they will get asked particular questions about them. And I think the George operating model, Councillor Hagman, is one of those issues that the way the project had evolved in terms of a very, very strong push to develop a capital funding model and accessing levelling up funding from UK government. That was there's a very strong push to that, and that what we're now working on very much informed and learning lessons from what has happened at Moat Brae, is to get a very, very robust operating model in place that will allow community involvement within the facility, perhaps outright community management of it, but we're still looking at options on that, because there are parts of the facility, given that it's doing a few things all under one roof, that different organisations may well be involved in different aspects of that, rather than one organisation taking the whole thing on. And at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to how much support can be given to organisations from a revenue perspective to go in and start running the facility in its early years, while hopefully it gets on its feet and becomes a facility that is self-sustaining, and that is the ultimate goal. And I've taken notes of your ask to add the Sea Pirates group to that schedule on Appendix 1.
Thanks
very much,
Stuart. Councillor Hagman, have you got any comebacks?
Yes, so it's Sea Pirates, not Sea Pirates, just to be clear. And in terms of obviously we've got the communication plan. Are you able to share the other plans? I'm more interested in what the risk plans are. What's the risk register looking like? Just so I've got awareness of that. So if you're able to forward those following the meeting, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do. Yes.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Thanks for that, Councillor Hagman. Councillor McCarman.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't have a question as such. I've got more of a comment and a bit of information sharing for those that are not aware. But it's with regards to the George Hotel, and I do welcome the communication plan. And as it's been said, and I won't repeat it as such, but it is super important. But I think what's not been mentioned is the level of disruption that there is, and there's going to be to local businesses surrounding the area. I know that Finlay Carson MSP has already worked very hard to get them a rate reduction because of this. But if you refer to page 150 on the report, be an inclusive council, that's not just text. We need to stand by that. And various people through various avenues have got in touch with me with my E&I hat on as Vice Chair, to see what support we can get for the disruption to local businesses surrounding the George Hotel. And I'm going to make it my main aim these coming weeks to find out from officers exactly what we can get them, because this is our disruption. We're causing this disruption. And if you look at the Edinburgh tram disruption, for example, there was work around that done for businesses that got rates reduction and financial support for the time that the work was taking place. Now, I'm not talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, but I think we owe it to businesses and our economy and the Stranraer economy to work with these businesses that are being affected by road closures or any sort of disruption that this work is causing. Not that I'm not grateful that the work is taking place. And I'm aware that businesses could close, for example. So we need to work with our communities, local businesses within this. I'm surprised it's not been mentioned in this committee, and how we can take this forward and get them the support that they need. So I'm not promising the earth, but I've got a meeting with Steve Rogers this week to take it forward and discuss to see what exactly we can be offering them realistically. I'm not going to accept the response of, well, we can't, I'm afraid. That's just not acceptable. We need to explore funding for this and show that Stranraer and the local businesses and the people of Stranraer that we do care out with this project and the surrounding businesses, for example. So we've caused this disruption. Like I say, it's on our responsibility to do something about it, the effects that it's having on businesses surrounding the area. So just a bit of information, Chair. I know you've raised it as well time and time again, the issue here that I'm mentioning. So it's just a bit of information that I am taking it to the E&I committee to talk directorate to talk about, and then if there's any update whatsoever, it will come straight to ward members, particularly in Ward 1 and Ward 2, obviously, if there's any update on it or to what we can actually offer these businesses. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor McCammon. I don't think there was a question there, was there?
No, just simply to get it into the public forum and for more information sharing for the wider committee. Thanks.
Members, I've got Councillor Scobie. Is it on that point, Councillor Scobie? Briefly, please.
Yeah, and I appreciate the support that Jackie's given here. I had a meeting with Stuart on Friday with the businesses, business owners, or the occupants of buildings. I've now requested a report to come to the appropriate committee, whether it's full council, one of the service committees or whatever, prepared by the proper officer under standing orders in terms of a compensation scheme for members to consider, look at that. So I would hope that Jackie, on what she said, that she would give support to that, and also asking for that report to come forward as a matter of urgency, because it's been 3 years and more that the traders have been affected by the closure of Church Street and the effect that has on George Street. So I've requested the report, and I would hope that on the work that Jackie's doing, that she would also support the calling of that report.
Thanks for that, Councillor Scobie. I see Councillor McCallum wants to come back in, but just briefly before I go, Willen, would we be able to formalise that request that Councillor Scobie has in for that report? If it doesn't go to E&I or the Economic Resources Committee, it can come here before.
Is this really
No decision making here, but we can recommend, but so that it's aired and so that it's seen.
That's really covered by standing orders, and the process would provide the proper officer determines where that report would go. If there's been agreement to take that report, then that will follow the process. If there wasn't agreement to take the report, then that would go elsewhere for members to determine.
Right, thanks for that, Claire. Councillor McCallum.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Scobie, for that information, and absolutely, of course, I'll support it. But I'm working on urgency here, because there are, I'm told, businesses that will close potentially before Christmas. So if we can get a report, that's great. But if we can get any action on it before that, that would be even better, which is what I'm going to aim to do. Obviously, there's governance and that to go through, and the right protocols and processes. But hopefully, we can get a shifty on and potentially get help. But like I say, I will always keep you updated on anything that's progresses.
Stuart.
Thanks for asking me back in, Chair, and just for Councillor McCammon's information as well, that some of the work that the officers have been doing with traders, either chapping on their doors and going in to visit them, or in meetings that such as the meeting that Councillor Scobie mentioned, which we held on Friday evening, has elicited a few of the businesses who are interested in some of the services that the Economic Development Service and Business Gateway can offer in terms of business development, marketing, and training, etc., and some investment in low and zero carbon technologies, as well to seek to reduce their utility bills. So the staff have engaged with those traders and with those businesses on what is currently available to them and they can access, and that's been a proactive piece of work that we've done. And it sounds like you were aware that the district valuer has been looking at discounts on non-domestic rates and water charges as well for properties in Church Street and George Street. So a few things in process, but I'll wait to hear what the outcomes of discussions are with senior officers and members' own considerations in terms of a pathway toward any other mechanism that people might feel is appropriate for Stranraer.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Councillor Dashbourne, patience is a virtue.
Thanks, Chair. Just a wee question, really, about the road closure. The completion date for the George, I get that it's been delayed, but is there a separate, maybe, date for when the road can reopen? I'm assuming, you know, that the completion date for the George includes the internal works, but will the road be able to open sooner, or do we know that, or can we ask the contractor if they can give us some information on that? Thanks.
Sure.
The only information I have at present on that, Councillor Dashford, is that the scaffolding, and therefore the need for the road closures, is there for the whole duration of the contractor's work on site. So it essentially looks like it would be one of the last things to go. But there will be some finer detail on all of that to come. And I can certainly get an update from the project managers on site as to what that's currently looking like.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Thanks, Stuart. It has been shut for a number of time now because of the museum works as well. The original facade logo of the George I saw was on display in the contractor's building, the old George Hotel logo. I did EMES this a while ago, but is there a sort of plan for what we're doing with the original facade? Do you know? It was raised whether, I don't know if the museum wanted it to put it on display, because it is an original piece, so it might be worth preserving.
Sure.
Yep, I think there's a number of items that have been salvaged, if you like, from the George, which are in storage at the moment. Includes some of the tiling, some of the balustrades on staircases, etc. So we've got a couple of options for that. I think one of the more likely options, Councillor Dashford, is not the final decision on it, but we'll probably find a place to display that in the building rather than in the museum. But that's part and parcel of the conversations that are going on at the moment.
Even better. Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks for that, sure. Thanks for that, Councillor Ashburn. Councillor Ingalls.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question to Stuart regarding the monthly meetings that we requested that Ward 1 members could attend either monthly or bi-monthly. Is that likely to happen, Stuart? Second question was around the operating model. Flagged this up a long time ago. I think elected members need to be in at the early discussions on what that operating model is going to look like. I think Councillor Scobie touched on it earlier. Any idea whether that can be accommodated?
Sure.
Thanks, Councillor Ingalls. I want to be as positive as I can about both of those because I think they're constructive suggestions. So we're working with Modern Gov in terms of diary commitments, etc., to get slots into diaries for the sessions that you've requested, just in terms of updates. So I think we've certainly got quarterly sessions booked in diaries for 2025. Separate to that, the PMO are also organising quarterly site visits for the rest of the duration of the George contract. I think one of those will be happening pre-Christmas. And Julian Harris and that team have been organising that. So I think between sort of formal briefing sessions and opportunities to be out on site and looking at things, we'll certainly have plenty of contact with each other over the next period. And I'm more than happy to arrange for a particular session with members who are interested in the options for the George operating model as part of the methodology that we're developing for taking that forward with a specialist group who are looking at the potential revenue model, and therefore where we take that in terms of potential operators and who might be interested in that in the local area or the wider region.
That's for that short. Councillor Ingalls.
Okay, right. So what I was trying to get to, Stuart, was a bi-monthly meeting following the site meeting that's probably attended by architects and contract managers and what have you. And following that meeting, immediately following that meeting, maybe a half hour or an hour briefing for the local elected members to sit in with that team just to get an update on the project. I think that would be a more direct, positive communication for local elected members. I think they would feel as if they were really involved in the project. And I think that was what was behind that request, Stuart. I don't know whether that's something that can be accommodated. I can't see why it can't be accommodated. I can understand why you wouldn't want them to be at the sort of monthly contractors meeting. But certainly just that briefing. I'm not talking about the 3 monthly meetings that or updates that we get, the briefings. I'm talking about that bi-monthly contact that the team has with the local elected members. And as far as the operating model goes, it is a wee bit of a concern to me that we're still in a position, having started this project, with not really having a clear vision of exactly what's going to happen. And I think it's not a great message to be going out to the community. So the sooner we can get that sort of bottomed out. I understand it's difficult, Stuart, I know that, but you know, there are so many projects like Moatbrae as an example that, you know, it was hailed as being, you know, a great tourist attraction, and it's sort of fallen flat on its face. We really can't afford that to happen at the George Hotel. So, and I think elected members, somebody mentioned it earlier, that it's us on the street that get asked, you know, what's happening with it, do you think that's going to work? Yeah, you know, that sort of stuff. So the closer, particularly the Ward 1 members are involved in what's happening at the George, from our perspective as elected members, is probably a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that, Councillor Inglis. Before I come on to Stuart, is it worth us formalising what you've just asked for, Councillor Inglis, in our recommendations that we would like that as a part of due course, and so it's formalised within this committee, it's not going to fall off the wayside?
I don't mind that. I understand the restrictions there are on site visits and site, site meetings and the time that's involved in those. If you feel it needs to be formalised, then I'm quite happy to go along that line, yes.
I think as a committee we need to take the bull by the horns here, and I would like that formalised. Claire, have you got any words to formalise that, or will I come to Stuart first for our response while Claire creates some words?
So I think if I'm picking Councillor Inglis up correctly, and I've found the dates that the Project Management Office have circulated for potential site visits. So these were visits with the to the site led by the Programme Management Office and the officers running the contract. So wasn't necessarily involving the economic development staff, which is was absolutely fine. So I see there's actually something in the diary for Friday, and I think that's been my note from Gillian Harris, the project manager, is that those dates have been circulated to members. She has had confirmation from yourself, Councillor Inglis. I'm not sure if she's had confirmation from others, but this email is a week or so old. Then there's a further on-site visit on the 6th of February organised, and one for the 9th of May. So if we were to look at certainly the February and May dates in terms of mobilising some additional content and updates around the fact that those sessions are already in the diary to look specifically at the George, I think we could absolutely facilitate that.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Councillor Inglis?
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling that Councillor Scobie and other ward councillors really need to be part of that progression, which is why the request was a bi-monthly meeting following the on-site monthly meeting. And I'm sure Willie wants to dig out his yellow jacket and go in there and sit at the table, you know, and would I be right in saying I think that's really what we're looking for, Stuart. Whether you can accommodate that or not, I don't know, but I think it's certainly, I would feel more comfortable if elected members had that sort of bi-monthly access meeting, sitting on site or on the site office, in the site office, and feeling part of that.
And Councillor Ingalls, from your first point, from your first entrance into the debate, that was with the architects and the actual ground team. And I appreciate that you said that might not be able to be done every time, but it's not. We've got that direct contact. It's just trying to get this for the recommendation here that we're making.
I tend to look at this as ultimately we're the client, and we should really be involved a wee bit closer than we are. Thank you.
I'll bring in Councillor Scobie and then Stuart.
Yeah, it's just to echo on support what Dave is saying. I think that would very much be of great help to local members if we were to have those meetings on a bi-monthly, if that's what we are saying. And when you just look at the report today and the further information that's been given, that's the first time we've known about the 16 weeks. So that would be something, you know, if there is anything else that we need to know, then that could be done at that time, and we could see the real effect of anything that's going on. And I'm quite sure that Stuart refers to PMOs and everything. I'm quite sure that this information is fed back to the project board, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have that same information at the same time. And if that's agreeable to a bi-monthly visit, then I'm sure that can be done. They've also got their office, their well-being office, which is just to the back of the whole construction. So there's facilities there that we could, I would hope they can facilitate what's being asked today in that respect.
That's what I can't score. Stuart, I saw you shaking your head. Have you got an issue with this?
A wee bit. I'm sure we can work through it, and some of this is probably just reaching a collective understanding. So part of that is, even as officers in economic development, etc., we don't sit in site offices, I suppose, with the contractor and the architects, etc. That is mandated to the council's programme management office and those technical professionals who are there to manage the contract. So I think we just need to find a way in which members can get satisfaction for as to that a deeper level of communication and involvement in the project, but which does not get in the way of those technical professionals working through issues, issuing instructions, and managing the contract. And there will be sensitivities to all of that in terms of what the Clerk of Works and what the QSs are professionally required to do on our behalf. So we tend to work through the Programme Management Office for all of that technical detail, and at different sessions get those professionals to report to us about the issues that are happening on site in the programmes and what actions they are taking to resolve all of that.
That's right. You can appreciate there's a bit of fire in the belly of the members in the room here. We want to get a grip on this and really tackle the bull by the horns, if I don't want to say it again or consistently. But Councillor Scobie wants to come in.
Yeah, just on the remark Stuart made there, the comment Stuart made. If I, on a personal basis, was investing £8 million or so on a project, I would want to be sitting on top of it. So I would. And there's no reason, and David referred to it, we're the client. So there's no reason why we shouldn't sit on top of it to see that things are progressing and see to that. And I would hope that officers were doing that. Personally, I would like to think that there's someone on site all the time from the council, just making sure that our investment is being properly managed. So in that respect, I have no difficulty with that. You know, and I think it's ludicrous that we don't have somebody there sitting on top of the contractor to make sure that everything is being carried out the way that we would want it for our investment.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Stuart?
Yeah, and just to assure Councillor Scobie, that is the job of the Clerk of Works. That is, our Clerk of Works is on the site. Our project management professionals, Gillian Harris is a name that you'll have, I think, heard of, but maybe haven't met Gillian, is on site. So there's a huge level of supervision of the contractor that you would expect on a day-to-day basis. So I can absolutely assure you that that is happening, that the contractor is being managed very, very effectively through the Programme Management Office. What I'm saying is those are the appropriate professionals doing that job. So it's not an economic development officer, for example, that's sitting down with the contractor and discussing what issues and problems that they are having on site, because we're not technically qualified to have those discussions and issue any directives or instructions to the contractor as to what they should be doing. That is the job of the programme managers.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Thanks, Stuart. Councillor Ingalls.
Yeah, sorry, I was just digging out that email, Stuart. Yeah, there is a site visit 1 o'clock on the 8th. I don't know if everybody's got that in the diary. It went out to everybody from Gillian Harris, so that is in for this Friday. Yeah, but and the next one after that is February. You know, so you can see why, Stuart. It just feels that there's a bit of a disconnect for that period again, and then, and I hate to bang on about this, but I still think that, you know, a half-hour or 1 hour meeting for the Ward 1 councillors to sit following the site management meeting, the monthly site management meeting, wouldn't it be difficult to organise and would give local councillors that feeling of connection and ownership of the project? And I would support Willie in that. I think it's important that they get the feeling that they're actually in there, they're on that site. So, yeah, whilst I don't want to force their hand, I would say a request would be quite a good thing to see whether Stuart or his team could facilitate that.
That's that, Councillor Scobie.
Thanks again for letting me in, Chair. I don't recall receiving that email, Stuart, but that doesn't mean to say I haven't got it. On Friday, I have a difficulty with, given that a previous leader of the council's wife has just suddenly passed away, and the funeral's on Friday. So I have a difficulty with that one. But I'm delighted to hear you say that Gillian Harris is our person on site sitting over that. If it's professionally maybe not acceptable to meet on site or with some of the contractors, we could meet on a monthly or bi-monthly basis with Gillian, and she could fulfil that role in giving us the full detail of what's going on, if she is the person that's responsible for the day-to-day. So there are ways and means of getting around it. And as members, I think we should be fully appraised of what's going on and how it is developing. So that's a way forward and progress, if you like.
Thanks for that, Carol's going. So, Claire, can I invite you in to give us our new recommendation, which we'll name point 3. Point 4, sorry.
Right, I'm on like version 10 of this, so excuse me if I've got this wrong. I've got requested that briefings be provided to members following your already arranged site visits to George, and this would be with appropriate person rather than start naming people, and this would provide added assurance to members on progress of a significant project in your ward.
I think that's about right. So we're happy with that, councillors. I'm getting nods in the room and nothing online. Is that palatable for you, Stuart?
Yeah, absolutely fine. You could probably actually, rather than saying appropriate persons, just say the project managers.
That's great. Thanks for that, Stuart.
Yeah.
Oh, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just, Stuart, one last question on the operating model at 4.10 in the paper. The work, obviously, to investigate and appoint that operator began in 2023. We're almost at the end of 2024, and throughout that process, I think it's become clear that it's become far more difficult than maybe you'd hoped it would be to assign that operator or operators if there's maybe multiple. And in the Ward 1 and 2 economic briefing that you gave us just the other week, it states within it that a tender process was underway in Q3 of this year to assign, is it a specialist assistant for the council? Has anyone come back from that tender yet? Do we know? Just because obviously the process to find this operator began in 2023. We're almost at the end of 2024. The proposed completion date, you're saying today, is still 2025. Is there a growing level of concern that we might have a beautiful building, but we won't have in time the people to fill it? And we certainly don't want or can't afford that ongoing financial burden to be on the council to heavily subsidise that.
Thanks for that, Councillor Marsh. Stuart?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Marsh. So the procurement, so we're out of procurement at that. So there's a framework of advice that we can utilise, that we're going out to companies to give us some advice about this, because you're quite right. The work to identify an operator has been ongoing for some time, and the original intention, which was a pretty sort of clear intent at the time, of a community organisation coming in to manage the building. Over that period of time, it became all too obvious that actually we were at a high. That was a risky strategy in itself. That would be putting on an enormous onus on let's say a local third sector organisation to manage a very large building with multi-dimensional building as well, where there are very few organisations around which actually have that background, that level of expertise, and just operational setup to be able to do that. So it became very clear to us over the course of the earlier part of this year that the pathway has to change, and that we should be taking on some additional advice about that. It is the highest risk on our risk register, and because that absolutely that we're doing this to deliver a set of very particular benefits to the town, which requires the sustained operation of the facility. So without that sustained operation, we cannot deliver the economic and social benefits that we are all so interested in seeing emerge from that facility. So that hence the intent focus on that now by the economic development team, whilst the project management team are managing the site and the construction part of the project.
Thank you for that, Stuart. Councillor Marsh?
That's okay, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Ingalls?
Just a quick one again. Are you having conversations with, like how wide is our circle of conversation? Are we talking to South Scotland Destination Alliance, for example, South Scotland Enterprise, people like that, to see, because I know that David Hope-Jones had some really good ideas for a specific site in Stranraer.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ingalls. Yes, South Scotland Enterprise, SSDA, etc., are absolute. Visit Scotland as well. Absolutely, the sort of agencies, I suppose, that we're looking for. But those agencies won't operate the facility. So, but through some of those conversations and some of those connections that they will have as agencies and people who work with others across the both the social enterprise sector as well as the commercial sector. Through those conversations, we hope to flush out additional options that we can consider for the operations of the building. But I'm going to take from this conversation, which has been really useful to me as well, is that as we take forward these options for consideration, that we loop in the elected members into those discussions as well, so that you can see where we're moving in terms of a way forward and potentially with who.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Councillor Inglis?
Yeah, I think just the last 10 or 15 minutes, the discussion we've had here from elected members and yourself, Stuart, has been really beneficial. You know, and it's opening up all sorts of avenues. And it's also given us that wee bit of sense of ownership that we're involved in this. And I think that's where we really need to get to, you know. So I'm sure a lot of our suggestions are maybe just rubbish, but I'm sure there's some things we can come up with we can help you with. Thank you.
I don't think there's an answer in there, Stuart.
Appreciation, though. Appreciation. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. So Stuart, we've come to the end of the members' questions. I've got a question, though, and that's maybe veering off this report to something that I feel like maybe should be on this report, which is the Stranraer Conservation Area Regeneration Scheme. Is it appropriate for me to ask you for even a brief update on that, or is that not with you?
We can include at the next one a quick update on that. Essentially, the project is closed or closing, Chair. So, but yes, you're right. Actually, there hasn't been an update at either of the ward briefings, actually, or the committee, just in terms of the final couple of projects and have they completed and have they drawn down all their cash, for example. So. More than happy to include that in an update as well.
That would be great. Thanks for that, Stuart. Members, I think that's us going to the recommendations. So members are asked to, 1, note the updates on projects within Stranraer Regeneration as set out in paragraphs 4.2 to 4.17. 2, note the update on the George project as set out in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.14, including our progress update on the works and details of work to develop the operating model. 3, note that further updates be brought to this committee to record the progress towards meeting project milestones and to provide details of ongoing stakeholder engagement and communications. And we have a 4, which I'll allow Claire to read for us.
Okay, thank you. Chair requested that briefings be provided to members following the already arranged site visits to George by the project managers in order to provide added assurance to members on progress of what is a significant project in Ward 1.
Thanks for that, Claire. Councillor Scobie.
Further recommendation members would accept, just that members would support, while the area committee supports the request for a report on a compensation scheme for those affected by the road closure at the church at Church Street, and to look at that in terms of the Edinburgh settlement by Edinburgh City Council.
Can we take that at this point in time, Claire? That's a point 5.
Well, you've been advised of the request and you can choose to support that request.
Are members minded to support? I'm happy for that to be added to our recommendation. Yes. So can we have that added as a formal point 5, please? So members, we're happy with the recommendations that I've just outlined? Yes. So we're on to item number 6. Review the area committee's report by Head of Thriving Communities. Our third report for consideration is to seek members' views regarding current and future arrangements for area committees. The Review Standing Order Subcommittee agreed to carry out a review of area committees and arranged for a member workshop and a questionnaire to elicit views, and these are summarised in the report's appendices. It was also agreed that feedback from the workshops and proposed next steps will be considered by area committees, and that the purpose of today's report. Members are asked to consider the workshop feedback, Appendix 1 and the survey, Appendix 2, and provide any additional comment on the seven questions listed in 4.2.1. I'll ask first whether members have any comments on the feedback summarised in the appendices, then go on to ask for comments on the 7 questions for proposals in turn. Members, do you have any comments on the feedback contained in the appendices? Liz Manson is here to answer questions also. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, just on the questions as contained in page 159, question 1, do the area committee wish to continue with a style of a 6-month performance report? I would hope no. Question 3, do the area committee wish to undertake deep dive? And we've heard earlier this morning in terms of education. I think that is appropriate. It starts to address the issues that's local to members in both Ward 1 and Ward 2. So the answer to that one, in my opinion, would be yes. In terms of 4.2.2, I referred earlier to the Scottish Government, and I think it was referred to as the travelling circus, but nevertheless, they do go out. Their cabinet, that's the 53rd time, as the First Minister said. The cabinet had gone around Scotland, and it may be something that we should look at in terms of area committee and the administration, in terms of being accountable, a similar format to that. I did attend on Monday and managed, or at least one of the 77 campaign team managed to get a question in, which is very difficult, but we did get it. But we got the opportunity to meet with a Transport Minister at the end of the session, which is equally as important. So in that respect, I would hope that we maybe look at that as a model that we could follow. It refers there at the bottom of the page, area committee to endorse local place plans. You and I have discussed this ad nauseum for a lengthy period. I think we should be involved in the place plan without actually taking decisions until it is formalised at that level. So I feel at times that we are aloof of what's going on by way of local plans and only get it when it's coming before us for a decision. So I think we should be involved more in that. I'm ambivalent in terms of asset transfer, in the sense, should we be involved? I would welcome others' views on that. And again, wish to have question 8, do area committees wish to have the remit to endorse local place plans? As I say, yes, but we should be involved as advisors or whatever beforehand. Thank you, Chair.
Well, we've got Councillor Scobie's answer. Thanks for that, Councillor. Councillor McCarman.
Yeah, I'm not going to refer too much to the questions. I'm going to ask Liz a question, though. Liz, is there any way that, for the future formats of area committees, is there any way that we can possibly tie in the action tracker? So at the minute, it's going to be, in the current format, the action tracker is going to be a bit of a lengthy document. But is there any way that we can tie it into all the relevant information on the action tracker and pull all the Ward 1 and 2 into area committee, and you know, for the rest of for the other area committees as well? Is that something that we can look at?
Yes, I'm certainly happy to add that into the area committee review. The current arrangements, my understanding is that they were decided by the Business Bureau. Yeah. But, you know, there would be a way of us talking that through, I'm sure, with the Business Bureau and looking at it as part of the review. I understand I'm guessing behind your question is just about knowing what outcome has come from any decisions that the area committee has taken. So, yeah, very happy to add that in, and that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
It's very much like the review we get of each member gets of their EMESs.
Yeah.
Similar to that, and then you know, everyone's kept up to date with what the action tracker actually is doing for Ward 1 and 2. But you know, if it's going to be a laborious task, then just scrap it.
Well,
but,
we can certainly look at it as part of the review. No,
okay,
thank you for that.
Thanks for that, Councillor McCalman and Liz. Councillor Ashburn.
Thanks. Just a point of clarity, really. I'm looking at 4.2.4.1, page 160. It goes on about the IGB agreement, and the scheme of administration has been amended to reflect new changes. I didn't sit on Social Work Committee in February, so I'm not really up to scope with these. Is that saying that we no longer receive health reports to Area Committee?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, because I'm looking as well at page 163. It says from the feedback that elected members are still keen to continue receiving reports on health from police and fire and rescue services. So there's an appetite for us to have these conversations with the health services, but you know, from what I just read, it seems that that's not happening anymore.
So yes, indeed, I don't know what the discussion was at the Social Work Committee in February when members were looking at the proposed new agreement for the IGB, but clearly at that meeting, members agreed the new agreement, which does not have area committee reporting in that agreement any longer. You will be aware that what has been put in place by the IGB is the member briefings by area committee. So there is that a communication, but there is, my understanding is there is no longer a formal reporting of locality plans by the IGB at local level.
I've got Claire Robertson coming in. She's got some information here.
Just to confirm, the previous integration scheme made direct reference in it to reporting at area committee of those locality plans. The integration scheme that received ministerial approval in August took out, or didn't have that reference, so therefore our scheme was reflected to our scheme insofar as IGB reflects what's in that integration scheme. Thank you.
Yeah, I sort of equate the three services together. You know, you've got your health, you've got your police, and you've got your fire and rescue services. I don't know what other members of the committee feel, but I do feel that certainly if we're saying in our feedback that there's an appetite to still be having these conversations with the health services, I don't know if that's something that we want to review. I don't know, Chair. Thanks.
I'm going to take a guess and say there is an appetite, but I'll put it to our members. But Councillor Ingles is up next for speaker.
Yeah, just on that point, I think locality meetings were really useful, and that's not happening anymore. But those locality meetings I found very informative to area committee. I don't know about the rest of the members, but I certainly thought they were good.
Any other members? Councillor Scobie, did you want to come on that one?
Yeah, Chair, you just need to look at the last two decisions by the IGB. I think we should be getting reports and just the effect of what those decisions will have on the local area. Massive impact on service delivery and the effect it will have on the environs.
I've got Liz Manson coming in and then Dave Engle.
Yeah, thank you. So it was really just to make the distinction between the performance reporting, which is the aspect of the IGB agreement that is no longer in place. And again, if the members who were at the Social Work Committee may have views about the discussion that took place in February. But that sort of briefing and an opportunity for elected members to speak to IGB staff. You had one in September and there's another one planned for this month. So there is that opportunity for you to talk to the IGB and get information and briefings. So it's just the distinction between the performance reporting at the area committee meetings and the opportunity to have a dialogue with them. So I hope that's a helpful distinction. And just to go back to the other issue, police and fire, there is no suggestion that they will be discontinued. They certainly are still committed to doing that, and indeed constantly look at the format of how they present the information to you to make sure that it's the best it possibly can be. And the discussions are taking place with South of Scotland Enterprise as well about them bringing a report, and we've had positive signs from them as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Liz. Councillor Ashmore.
Yeah, no, thanks, Liz. I appreciate that. I'm looking at 5.7.3 on page 167, which is the current scheme. So we receive performance reports from the police and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. I also think it's important to hear from RSLs, registered social landlords, about the local situation. Locally, I appreciate we're establishing this new housing subcommittee, but you know, that's region-wide. And I don't sit on that committee, so we don't necessarily have that sort of local knowledge. Would we be able to recommend as a suggestion that we invite RSLs such as Wheatley and Lorburn?
Very much so, yes. That's exactly the kind of thing, just to get a sense from you about, during this review, what is it that you would like to get updates from? So no, very happy to take that on as a suggestion too. Thank you.
I'm happy with that as well, Les. I think that's very worthwhile bringing in the RSLs into this forum to discuss a very localised need that we have here. Any other members? Councillor Inglis, sorry. Councillor Inglis been covered. I think that's us for the moment for this. So, members, we're going to go into Councillor Inglis.
It was just on Councillor Dashford's point that I was finished. Yeah, it was just to go back to the answers to the questions. And I quite agree with Councillor Scobie in question 1 and question 3. Question 4,
sorry, Councillor Inglis, I'm just about to go into a methodology.
Sorry, right,
method of all this. Okay. So I should have said that, but the way the note's written, we stopped there for comments and then we're going into. So, members, I'm going to go into a methodical approach for this one, where I'll ask you in turn at each question to bring in your opinions. So, members, question 1. Do we wish to continue to receive the current style of 6-month performance reports on service plans? Councillor Inglis.
Sorry, don't want that recording. No, I think I think that needs to be reviewed.
Yes, that's that. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, I'm still of a no on that one, because we're looking at reports that are 6-month-old and it doesn't give us any indication. So, no, I think we need to find what we looked at today earlier. It's that deeper dive that's in another question.
Councillor Marsh, would you have a similar?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree entirely.
Great. Councillor Dashford, yep. Online, do we have any dissenting views? I think in the room, we're all... sorry, Councillor Cullen.
Chair, can I just ask a question? What's the alternative?
I think looking at the papers... Actually, I'll allow Liz.
I'm happy to answer that. So again, you know, in a sense, we'd be keen to hear what your views are about that. The two issues that have come up at the workshop last year and the survey, one option is that sort of perhaps a couple of deep dives in the way that the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee does. So you would maybe pick a particular topic, perhaps where there's been underperformance, or you think that there's some great news to share, so you would go into something in a lot more detail and have a report. So you would focus your scrutiny on a couple of smaller issues. The other alternative which is suggested is that you would simply get an update report on sort of current things that are happening in each of the localities. Of that, I think that the social work services did not have any indicators or any projects that they were reporting at area level last year, but you still got a report every 6 months about the things that they were doing in each locality. So, you know, we've not been too prescriptive, I think, about what the alternatives might be. Very keen to hear from members about what would be most use to you.
I think with question 1, 2 and 3, question 2 and 3 the answers depend on what your answer is to question 1, Councillor McCallum. I think the room are very much in favour of no for question 1, question 2 is irrelevant then, and question 3 we would support the deep dive approach.
Deep
so
dive.
And that's my understanding. Is that right in your mind, Councillor McCallum?
I mean, I'm happy to support what the majority, but she also sorry, not she, Liz, also mentioned a report on current affairs. Is that right?
That could be one of the alternatives, yes, that, you know, you get just an update on what services or directorates are doing in each locality on a scheduled basis. And that doesn't, you know, that it would be perhaps a general update. It certainly doesn't preclude any specific topics, like say you have a policy report on a particular issue that is relevant, you know, where you've just been talking about the George Hotel, for example. So the two are not mutually exclusive. You could have both.
That's what that is. Councillor Dashper?
Yeah, just to touch on that point, really. I appreciate that what we're feeding back here is changes that we'd like to see to all area committees and the structure, but particularly for Wigtownshire, you know, when you're talking about specific issues and getting specific reports and things, you know, Wigtownshire is the harbour region of Dumfries and Galloway, so maybe, you know, even if the harbour master came here like once a year for an annual report on just our harbours, aside from the harbour subcommittee, obviously, just things like that, you know. Yeah.
I think that's very worthwhile, Councillor Dashper. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on the question 1 about the 6-monthly reports, if you take, for example, the first report we received today from Education, that went up to March of this year. So we're now sitting here in November looking at statistics that relate to March of this year. We've picked up issues about, you know, not achieving attainment, but we're too late now to do anything about that. You know, so I think it's maybe the frequency or the timing of when we're receiving these reports. If we got that far sooner, then if there's an issue raised locally, then we could maybe have a chance of doing something about it. But we're now sitting in November looking at a outdated March report when it's gone, you know.
Another aspect of that is the decision-making capabilities of this committee to actually fix these issues. In hindsight, we're very much, our hands are bound when we get these. It's just, it's a scrutiny exercise. Do I have any more speakers, Ingrid? No, not on this one. So, members, we'll move on to the question 4, which is: do area committees wish to have a programme of engagement with their communities, additional to ongoing methods of ward events and community conversations and activities of community councils? I'm going to kick this one off and say absolutely. I think it'd be very worthwhile for us as an area committee to invite the likes of your Shannara Development Trust in to discuss with us what their ambitions are. SWAZA, which is the Shannara Water Sports Association, some of our key players that are doing their own projects that are going to be growing our economy. I don't know so much for Ward 2, some of your key players. I think the Whithorn Trust is an example that I can pull out. But we should be engaging with these folks to see what their local ambitions are and how we can take them forward on a local level. But I'm going to invite other members in. Councillor Dashper?
Yeah, so for the common good, we've got community representatives. I don't know if it would be possible to have a similar thing for area committees from community councils and such, perhaps?
We certainly are looking about how you would engage with community councils, and one option could be that, you know, you would have, say, in the evening events that came up at the members' workshop last year, where you would invite your community councils to come along, where, as I'm sure you all know, we've just had the community council elections, and usually what happens after that is we talk to them about perhaps forming federations, so they would have a representative. So there are different models about how you would involve community groups and community councils, but the one that certainly came up last year was about evening events. They're not formal meetings like this, and as Councillor Giusti was just saying, you'd be talking to people about their ambitions, sharing that conversation between community councils, the community groups, and yourselves, perhaps on themes, so that you've got some focus for the events. But the idea normally is that they're less formal. So it's a different style of discussion that you're having, different kind of reporting.
Thanks for that, Liz. One of the things about being less formal, though, is we don't want to lose the formality in the sense of we want that formalisation where we can have a timeline and create a process then. I feel sometimes if we make things too informal, you lose process and then nothing ends up getting done. And that's not a criticism on officers, that's just how things go, unfortunately. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I don't know if Liz can think back pre-95, 1995, when it was Wigtown District Council and Regional Council. And I presume it's the same in all the other 4 districts, but there was an annual event of the district and the region coming together and meeting in Glenluce with the community councils. That was, I've just said there, an annual event. So that's one way of engaging that formality. So I think we should engage with the community just in terms of inviting a rep onto this. Then the community councils have tried to establish a federation here. Which
and it varies across the region.
I'm finding great difficulty in community councils joining federation because they think we're very parochial. It's about their issue, their parish, and so forth. So it'd be difficult to say who would be the rep, and it's not for us to select; it would be them. So there's a difficulty in that, but to overcome that, it would be an annual for the area committee to meet with the community councils on their issues and even some themed issues around that, so that we can meet with the community council. So we are in contact with them and we're up to speed with their business that they would want to have with an area committee.
I would add that.
Great idea.
Councillor Scobie, I'd add in contact and in concert with them. Councillors Marsh or Ingalls, have you anything to add here?
Yeah, I think, in my view, question 4, what we're doing at the minute covers it. We're doing ward events. You know, you can have a ward event any time throughout the year for any subject or bring in any group, or, you know, if you wanted to use that ward event to bring community councils together, you can do that.
We're going to touch this one briefly, Jackie, and then we'll bring you in. But Councillor Scobie.
No, it's just on the point that Davey makes there in terms of ward events. I think we need to speed up the process. And I see Gillian at the back there. I think it's taken from April, May to get a ward event on the waterfront and antisocial behaviour. So I think we need to speed it up in terms of the whole process and how it goes through. Because when we did come together and we looked at this as a way forward in terms of ward events, it was never envisaged it would take nearly however many months for May.
Yes, it's quite it's a very procedural approach for the ward events, yeah.
Also, I think with if you were to do it in an area committee kind of format, it allows all 8 members of the area to get involved in some quite very local, high impact stuff locally is what I'm trying to get at. Like, I don't know your ward, but bring in the likes of Development Trust. What are your ambitions? How can we support that and have those conversations? I think for me, that's what I'm looking at. Maybe not so much like the ward events, they'll still be a thing for the individual wards, but I think for a region and locality, for us to drive home those big events and those big issues, I think that's probably what I've got more in my mind. But Councillor McCallum, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that ward events sit separately because they're specific issues, specific wards. But I suppose I'm going on to question 5 here, Liz, in terms of the format, invitation, frequency. So could this potentially be just a public event, public meeting, for example, with your ward members? Because if so, I wouldn't fully be for that. I think, are we inviting do we invite anybody, or is it just an open meeting? Do we just invite groups or individuals? Like, Joe Blogs off the street allowed to come in, walk in, sit and listen. I just think we need to kind of get a grip of it here, because I think my understanding of what it was meant as has been distorted now by the debate, which is good. It kind of makes everybody's understanding clearer. But if we're talking, say, monthly, is it just come and meet with your ward members? I'm struggling to understand, to agree to it. I mean, it's good, obviously, more engagement between members and the community, great, but I don't want it to turn into a talking shop and a public meeting, for example, because that can get quite fiery. So obviously it would need to have format, and who would chair it? Would it be an officer? Would it be members or public or whatever? So I'm all for the idea and principle, but I would like to have some sort of form with it, because I'm not offering myself up for bait, I'm afraid.
And, we're very much in your hands about what you would want to see. I think that's our invitation and our offer to you about, if you tell us what do you think would be the most effective. So I'm picking up from that what you're saying is you think it would be better for it to be some kind of structured, some kind of invitation format, and have a particular theme with some actions at the end of it, so that it's got a purpose. And the concept was it's still an area committee meeting. It's just in a different style and a different format.
So for me, Liz, the way that what I've got in my mind, the format is the area committee would agree that we acknowledge I keep using the example because it's the most fresh in my head.
Good example.
Trust, for example. The area committee would say, we would like to meet with the Strata Development Trust. We'll invite them to our committee, and it may be a bolt-on at the end of a committee where we give them a slot to give us maybe a 15, 20 minutes, 30-minute presentation with maybe a 30-minute conversation, question time afterwards. And then perhaps after that, if we'd brought in, say, the Wigtown Trust or the Whithorn Trust, we would do the exact same process. And I think it would be by invitation to these groups. It wouldn't necessarily be a public debate for all the public to then come in, but it allows us to ask the questions. And it would be like this format. The public can come and sit, but maybe not ask questions at this format. And then that's maybe for the public to then raise that with these groups later on after the debate. But I've got Councillor McCammon looking to speak, then Councillor Scobie. I don't know if I've maybe picked up that correctly, of what the kind of thoughts are in the room, but we'll hear.
No, Andrew, Chair, that's exactly what I meant by the debate had kind of distorted my understanding, because that's exactly what I had in my head when I read this. Although, albeit we can do that already, we can invite whoever in, as is my understanding, but on a more formal basis and at a certain point within the area committee meeting. So that was my understanding, Chair. I'm happy to go and expand on it, obviously, but I think the format that you've just described is probably my preference, but obviously it's everyone's decision.
And it would still be the Wigtown area's meeting, so I'd assume it would be myself or the Vice Chair chairing, or if there's another chair that's lucky enough. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, and what you described there, Chair, ties back to question one, a change of format and how we conduct our business. And that would be inviting someone along that's of particular interest to the area and to give an explanation as to what they're doing, what their thoughts are, what their strategies and profiles are in terms of development in the area. But just on what Jackie said there, and I referred earlier to the Scottish Government, the First Minister, 53rd time he had taken out his cabinet. That was a public meeting, but you had to apply to get in. Now, we don't need to maybe be as formal as that, but that would be a public meeting to say, we are accountable to you, and to allow the public that access to elected members. And that could be done on an annual basis. As I refer to again, it happened pre-95 between the district and regional councils, and they met in Glenluce as the sort of central point, and members of the public could come along and ask questions. That was the same on Monday. The model there was that then the public could ask questions of the elected members, and that was the cabinet on Monday. So I don't see any reason why that could not happen on an annual basis, so that the people have access to us as an area committee, their elected members, to answer any questions on policies, direction or anything.
But that public meeting would be separate to our invites. So I was. Yeah.
It changes the format for us meeting as an area committee, and I think it's more relevant that you start to work with groups that are developing whatever it is that they're developing in the community.
If I remember rightly, Councillor Scobie, back in 2016, maybe early 2017, there was a meeting in Newton Stewart, I believe, for the roads for the A75, and that was attended by all the councillors at the time and the public. It was an evening, because I remember I was there. And that'd be a similar format, but maybe more official. But Councillor McCallum.
Yeah, I'm happy to support Councillor Scobie on that annual event. Let's not forget that Monday's event was a Cabinet Secretary who, or Minister who was specific to one subject. The meeting was about one subject. I think we need to be careful because it'll snowball if we open ourselves up to questions and whatever. So I'm fine with meeting with the public. I don't want it to turn in again to a talking shop and then it means nothing. We need to be there. There needs to be a format and fling any questions at us, but they need to be in a formal way and actions brought back to the said person that's asking the question. So I'm not against meeting in public, but I just don't want to sit in a room when folk are discussing various things and nothing's done about it. That's counterproductive.
That's what Councillor McCallum.
Just to clarify, it was not a meeting on Monday by the Scottish Government's Cabinet on one subject. It was open to questions from the floor. So the questions were not predetermined, or you could ask any question on any topic, and they just called from the audience. And I think that's a model that I would support. And one of the questions was indeed from person that was attending was, why can we not have this for local authorities and them coming before us? And I think that gives us that opportunity, that if there is, and so the questions were at random, could be taken anywhere, and those that didn't get their questions asked then still were collected in. There was a form there to fill in. So it wasn't on one topic, it was the Scottish Government, First Minister telling them where they were in terms of their business, and then it was open to the floor.
I'm supportive of the idea, although the idea of having any random question blasted at you from the public could be maybe a wee bit more difficult. I would maybe prefer maybe like a submission of questions beforehand and we would answer them, but I don't know if that's appealable. But I've got Liz Manson looking to come in on that.
I think Councillor no, that's fine. No, I was just going to say some of that, what you're describing is almost a sort of question time format. And we have had these in the past. So very happy to collect all your ideas here. And, it will come back to you as a proposal from the Review of Standing Orders Subcommittee and then to full council. So at the moment we're collecting all these additional thoughts and ideas, and we'll collate them across the 4 area committees and then come back to you with some proposals drawing on that. But these are really helpful thoughts and ideas about how else you might want to engage. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Liz. Does any other member have any other view? Councillor Dashburn.
Yeah, just one little boring question to round us off. I'm looking at page 167 again, 5.7.10. We have the delegation to to determine road traffic orders. Could you just explain exactly what that is? And because I don't recall that coming before area committee personally. Thanks.
There are some areas which are not delegated to officers to decide. So that's interesting that Wigtown hasn't had any. I don't think they're a very frequent appearance on area committee agendas because much of the routine requests for RTOs is a delegated authority. to, and I'm not going to remember which head of service it is now, I think Natalie. So there are occasions when you will be asked about a road, a change to a road closure or something like that, if it's a significant change. But happy to give you some more information about the detail about what's not delegated.
That would be useful. Thank you, because I thought this was all sort of officer delegated, really. So I was surprised to read this, but
occasionally,
yeah,
occasionally.
Thank you.
Claire.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm not an expert in that subject field, but I do recall that it does appear on some area committee agendas, particularly where there's perhaps an objection being lodged, and then it follows the process where it gets presented to the area committee.
So, Liz, I don't know if you want us to sum up what the...
No, I'm happy to have collected your comments.
Comments,
you know, and there's a range of things in there that will be really helpful for us to look at and then come back to you.
Thank you very much for that. So, moving on, members, to question 6. Would area committees wish to have the remit to approve community asset transfer requests if possible? I think I'm, like Councillor Scobie, I'm quite ambivalent with that one. How are the other members feeling? Councillor Ingalls?
Yes, I would say to that. The question 7 asks for would there be any limitations? So I would say yes, and there would need to be limitations.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think it's quite important because obviously in each of our respective wards we'll have our own local knowledge. So as opposed to these things going to, well, enabling and customer services, which used to be FPT, for maybe councillors who don't have a particularly great knowledge of these buildings or areas, I think maybe our local knowledge is particularly important in being able to decide and have a voice in whether these go through or not. So I would say yes to question 6. And also, like Councillor Ingalls, potentially, dependent upon value, maybe greater scrutiny would be required, but as to what that value or limit in value would be, I wouldn't want to be putting a number down on paper.
Councillor Scobie?
As I say, I'm ambivalent on it, and that's on past experience with various asset transfers coming before us. We've always had the opportunity to make comment, and those comments then, whether it's approved or not, go before the committee. If members feel that they will want to take that responsibility on, I'm easy. That's why I'm saying that I'm no a yes and a no. I'm ambivalent on it, but if it was to come to area committees, I would play my part.
I would say I'm similar. We get our opportunity to make comment and the recommendation at this level to the main committee, but if it came here, I don't feel it would make too much of a difference in my ability to be a councillor. Councillor Ashworth?
Yeah, I'm sort of ambivalent as well, but could I just ask, how would that work in practice then, where there is an appeal? Would that still go? We have a special CAT appeal subcommittee, I think. Would that just go to there then?
Yes, that would remain the same. Yes, you would have a region-wide appeal subcommittee.
Councillor Ingalls?
Yeah, I think it would maybe help. I'm assuming when it says asset transfer, it covers asset leases or short-term leases. Not just too sure on that one, but if it does...
the specific proposal that came up in the workshop last year was about community asset transfers. But your views on leases, happy again to record that if you think that it's something that would be appropriate. It's the challenge, of course, is getting the balance between having that region-wide overview, which the service committee has, and the local knowledge, which the area committee has, of course. So, you know, that's kind of where I think the discussion is around, and I think why so many members are ambivalent about it, because, you know, there are advantages to both models, I think. So yeah, just hearing your thoughts on it is helpful.
I think the process at the moment to get through an asset transfer is far too long. It takes far too long to go through. You know, there are good community groups keen to get into empty buildings that the council have got locked up at the present moment in time that could be contributing to the local community. And it's simply the process that it takes to go through it to get that delivered. So if it came to area committee and it was area committee that dealt with that and it helped to short circuit it or make it easier, then I would be fully supportive of that.
That's that, Councillor Inglis. Councillor McCarman, any views or thoughts?
No, a bit indifferent about it all, so I'm happy to go with the majority.
Thanks for that, Councillor McCarman. So members, so on Q7, if yes, are there limitations that should be set? For example, those recommended for approval, a value limit. So we've kind of discussed that, I think, just in that wee bit there, unless anyone's got any burning additions they would like to make. I'm not seeing any hands going up. So moving on to the question 8. Do area committees wish to have the remit to endorse the local place plan? I'm going to go first and say absolutely. I think that the area committee are vital as a part of the local place plan. We should also be leading on the local place plans and how they're coming forward and going forward. I think the public elect us individually and then collectively with an expectation that we are going to be leading on the forefront of these decisions, and that we are almost at the consultation, that 5-yearly consultation as your elected members, that you go out and you vote on, well, what does Andrew Juster, Ben Dartford, or Willie Scobie stand for? Well, we would all have had the George Hotel in our leaflets or on our messaging. So, yeah, you'll vote depending on what you believe in, and that's your consultation. Then we are expected, I think, by the public and the constituents to follow that up and actually enforce that. So I think absolutely we need to be a part of the place plan. Not just the decision making, but the actual implementation and the road ahead, the road to getting to that point. But I'll bring in other councillors. Councillor Inglis.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of work we're sent to do in a place plan, and we're well supported by the council officers that do it. If it's simply the registration of the place plan, then yeah, area committee should be doing that, I would say. Yeah. Getting involved in the nitty-gritty of making out a place plan or helping to do that, I think that's left to the third sector organisations and the officers that support them to do that.
Any other views, councillors? Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, I would support you to the point where, you know, maybe not for the elected members to lead. That's still very much a community-led basis, but we should be involved. And give advice and support, assistance, whatever, but not to be excluded from it because it's community-led. We've got a part to play in it. We should be, as you rightly say, at the heart of that. So there's a fine balance. It should still be community-led, but that we've got a part to play as well. And ultimately, it would be then for the area committee to endorse, to agree that place plan.
I think what I'm hearing there is actually, maybe my words I used were a wee bit too strong in the sense of us leading. It will be community-led, but we as elected members and leaders of the community should be involved within that. That's my position, anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, it's difficult to see where elected members would fit into the process of developing a place plan, having gone through it in Newton Stewart. Having said that, there wasn't a request to elected members for support that I can remember. So, I mean, maybe that should be there, really. Maybe that's what, you know, but it's very much down to one lead organisation pulling all the organisations in to deliver that. And I'm not sure what the Borderlands aspect of the Borderlands place plan, but certainly local place plans are generally down to the communities. If they needed any help, they would ask for it. So I don't know where you would come in on that.
Sorry, there's been pointed something there. I'll deal with that in a wee second, Claire. So, no, it's an answer on that one. I'm going back to the conversations we've had with the Chief Exec regarding the Stranraer Place plan, where the councillors were considered a part. The approach to us was we were a part of the public. I think that councillors are not just a part of the public, but there's an expectation of us to have a more statutory say and inclusion in the build of a place plan. I'm not saying that we would go out and build and do the work there, but I'm saying that we should have been included and had that opportunity. And I've raised this with the Chief Exec on a couple of occasions, but I think we'll leave that at that. You want to come back in on that, Councillor Scobie?
An example, perhaps, of this could be that we've got a place plan in Stranraer that has identified 6 priority projects. Part of that, those 6 priorities would be for the use of the East Pier. Now, I would support that, but the reality is that it's got the last report had it as a £40 million market failure. Now, any idea that the community could come up with and put in a place plan, then, you know, it's the reality of that. Now, to be involved in that would then give advice and support, but then to apply the reality. Because, you know, I would love to see the East Pier developed and to have something on it. But until we address that, so that's where, as a local member, I can understand that coming forward. And that doesn't take away the aspirations of a community, but it's based on reality. Now, that's no taken away from a community-led that they may come up with. But when we are sitting here knowing that, well, how are you going to do that? So I hope that example kind of gives that involvement without being leading the
Thanks for that, Councillor Scobie. I'm very minded that Councillor McCalman's been waiting for a while, and then Councillor Ingles, sorry. Councillor McCalman.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First of all, Liz, I'm interested to know why we're being asked this. I'm just, why weren't councillors considered in the first place? Why weren't we considered more part of the process in the first place to be brought this question, for example? I often think that we are not that involved as we should be. I don't know whether the word is involved or informed, because, as we know, elected members tend to kind of hinder a conversation or a process with debate, because everybody's got different opinions and views. So I'm more minded to say I don't think the area committee is the right place to address the issue or to raise the fact that we want more involvement. But it simply says endorse. So I'm not entirely sure what it is that's being said there. So there are 2 questions there, please, Liz. I suppose, why is the question being asked? Has someone raised it? And why weren't we involved more and informed more from the very beginning? And I suppose my other comment is it could be perhaps addressed, but not at area committee level. Again, I'm not going to die in a ditch about what decision is made, but that's just my opinion. Thanks, Liz.
No, very happy to come back about that. So the local authority's role to endorse a local place plan is part of the statutory process and the regulations that came out about local place plans. So as Councillor Ingles highlighted, it is very much a community-led process. So when the Scottish Government introduced the legislation, it arose from the planning legislation and came out with the regulations and the guidance. It is very much about communities coming together, and it is about the specific legal role is for the councils to endorse, and that's across Scotland. So that's the language in the legislation and the role. The reason it's here as part of the area committee review is when we had the members' workshop last year, and we're talking to members about, so what is it that you feel would be appropriate to be discussed or decided at area level rather than service committee level, this was one of the suggestions that came up in that discussion. So now we're sort of bringing it to you as a specific point for you to give your thoughts on that. And as I say, it will come back as part of the end result of this to the Review of Standing Order Subcommittee and then to full council. So just now we're just reaching out to hear your thoughts on it, and very helpful conversation. Thank you.
Councillor Inglis. Oh. Microphone. But Councillor Scobie is leaving the meeting. He has a prior engagement. Councillor Inglis.
No.
Sorry, Councillor Inglis, I thought you...
I may well just say another wee bit about this. When as the local place plan proceeds through all the development process, there's so much public engagement that elected members will be aware of what's going on to get the place plan developed. This is asking us whether we want to endorse the place plan rather than having to go to full council, am I right?
It's the Economy and Infrastructure Committee now in the new arrangement. Yeah.
Okay. So it's really just that endorsement. So it would be endorsed by Wigtown Area Committee rather than going to the main service committee.
I think we've grown feathers here, and I think it was me that grew the feathers and added extra to this, Liz. So yes, I'm supportive of us endorsing local place plans. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Sorry for adding a whole bit of debate there that we didn't have to have. So members, I've been reminded by Claire about our decision earlier on where we wanted to engage with the head teachers in our locality clusters, and that should have maybe been brought up in the either question 3 or within question 4. So Liz, earlier on, I don't know if you were
yes, I was listening in, thank you.
So we'll have that
and
captured.
Claire helpfully shared that, yeah. And you're absolutely spot on. It could either be part of your new performance arrangements, or it could be a less formal opportunity when you're talking to some of the schools in the cluster. So, either or indeed both of these options could be possible.
Thanks for that, Liz. So members, Fiona and Liz have been recording our views and our debate today on this item. Is there any last words or last comments that any members have got to make? No. So members, will move to the recommendations.
Sorry, Liz, I was just asking for money there.
Just generally or specific for some purpose?
Really just something that the area committee that's not poverty related or whatever that we could use.
The discretionary grant.
Yeah, use local.
Something that we can make Wigtownshire great again with.
No, it wouldn't need to be a lot. £1 million or £500,000 would be fine even.
So that would be about delegation of some region-wide funding, which you think could also be allocated to area committees.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. No, very happy to put that in.
Thanks for that, Councillor Inglis, and thanks for that, Liz. Members, are we happy to go to the recommendations now? Yeah. So members are asked to, 1, note the issues relating to area committees raised by members through our workshop and survey, as referenced in paragraph 4.2 in detail in appendices 1 and 2. 2, provide additional feedback on the issues, in particular focus on the questions highlighted in paragraphs 4.2.1 to 4.2.3, and 3, note the timetable for the development of recommendations and decisions by the Rosso subcommittee and full council as set out in paragraphs 4.3. Are we happy to note all these, members? Thank you, members. So members.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Liz. Members, on to item number 7, appointment to outside bodies, report by Assistant Director of Governance and Assurance. We now turn to our final report today, which is to appoint outside bodies, which is to is the appointment of outside bodies report. This report asks us to consider an outside body's appointment of one member to the Coronation Day Centre. Do we have any nominations for this position? Got no nomination. What I'm going to suggest, members, is that we maybe go back to the Coronation Day Centre and offer that the 4 ward members would maybe be willing to go to their meetings on invites, kind of like we do with a community council, rather than put this on a one member, so that we're all informed. I don't know if that would be agreeable to you, Councillor Dashper.
So the reason I've stepped down from my appointment is I don't feel that I'm qualified or informed enough to advise them on their financial situation personally, due to their unique relationship with the IGB, which I don't sit on, and things like that, you know. So I wouldn't be comfortable with that proposal because I just don't feel that I can be of direct help to them personally.
I can understand that, Councillor Dashper. I'm perhaps in a similar vein. I don't have a huge knowledge regarding IJB and the social work side of things, and I maybe wouldn't, it may be doing them a disservice having me at their meetings constantly, because I'll have my limited knowledge. What we'll do, Tracy, oh sorry, Councillor Inglis is looking to come in.
Yeah, I mean, local members have access to that knowledge if they need it. You know, it's a shame that an organisation like this doesn't have an elected member representative. You know, because if you feel like you don't have that background knowledge, then you can say, listen, I'll go away and find that out for you and come back to you.
I'm going to say, Tracy, we don't have any nominations on the day. I'll take it on for a year, and then we'll review it in a year and see if we can come to some kind of agreement within the Ward Board members on how we all support the likes of the Coronation Day Centre, so we're all involved. Because I think that sometimes is where the likes of the Coronation Day Centre, they would like us all to be working on their behalf and have knowledge on what they're doing. So I'll take it on for a year with a review.
Well done,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you.
So members, we're happy to move to the recommendations. Members are asked to appoint one elected member to the Coronation Day Centre Limited as detailed in section 4 in the appendix. The decision made is that the Chair, Andrew Juicy, will take the nomination with a year's review on how we actually progress this, so that we're all involved in the future. So members, moving on to item number 7, any other business deemed urgent by the Chairman due for the need of a decision? I have no other urgent business, so I can conclude our meeting. Thank you for all coming and your contributions.
Thanks everyone.
Chair.